Hey guys, and welcome back for another lesson on integers. My name is Miss Danielson, and today we're looking at both adding and subtracting integer values. And I'll try to give you some practical examples as well to make sure that you fully understand the theory behind it. One example we could use is this one here, with hot water being positive and cold water being negative, and the effect of adding or subtracting either hot or cold water being the addition or subtraction of either positive or negative integers. Let's get started. I hope you joined us for our previous lesson on adding integers. If not, I'm linking it down in the description box below. But in that lesson, we discussed how we add integers and that we always start from the first value and count up or down from there to see where we end up. Right now, we're going to get into the integer rules, where we decide whether we will add or subtract our integer values, but we never change the sign of the value we're starting with. That's our starting point. And then what we might change is whether we add or subtract to that starting value. When there are two signs directly next to each other, so two positive signs, two negative signs, a positive sign and then a negative sign, or a negative sign and then a positive sign, you need to know the rules to decide whether you should add or subtract. So when we see two positive signs, you're adding a positive number, we know that we are going to add. The value is going to go up, whether it's getting less negative or if it's already positive, it's getting more positive. While if we're subtracting a negative value, we are going to add as well. If the signs are the same, we will always add. And let me take you back to that example we had on the title page, where when we add hot water to a bathtub, the bathtub water will get hotter. If we take away cold water, so we turn the cold water tap down, will the bath water get hotter or colder? If you take away the cold, the bath water will get warmer. But the easiest way to remember this is simply that if the signs are the same, we add. We could also say the opposite. If the signs are different, we subtract. Again, thinking about our bath water, if we add more cold water, the water in the bathtub will get colder. Similarly, if we take away the hot water, so we turn the hot water tap down, again, the water in the bathtub will get colder. But it's much easier to simply remember this as when the signs are different, we subtract. So here are some examples. Remember that the sign of the first term never changes. So in example A, where I've got positive 4 plus minus 2, I am going to start at positive 4. And then I need to decide, with this plus minus, will I add to that positive 4 or will I subtract from that positive 4? I'm adding more cold water. The signs are different, so we're going to subtract. For question B, again, the negative 2 is not going to change. We're just looking at these two plus signs which are next to each other. I see plus plus. I add hot water. The signs are the same. I'm going to add. For question C, I'm going to start with positive 2, but then minus minus, will I add or subtract? Minus minus is taking away cold water. It's going to start getting hotter. That's the same sign, so we add. And finally, question D, minus 1 minus plus 2, minus and a plus. I'm taking away the hot water now. It's going to get colder. So that's minus 1 minus 2. So now that I'm clear on whether I will add or subtract, I can perform those calculations. Question A, I'm going to subtract 2 from 4, so that's 4 minus 2 is 2. For question B, I start down at negative 2 and I add 3 to that. That's going to take me past 0 up into the positives to positive 1. For question C, I start at positive 2 and I'm going to add 3 to that. Up 3, that takes me into the more positive values, that's positive 5. And finally, question D, I start down in the negatives at negative 1 and I subtract 2 from that. My value is getting more negative. That takes me down to negative 3. Now, hopefully that's fairly straightforward, but you will want to copy down your integer rules here. And I would recommend copying these sentences as well. If the signs are the same, we add. If the signs are opposite, we subtract. If you find it helps you, you might also want to copy that explanation about adding or subtracting hot or cold water. Let's have a look at some integer problems now. So for example 2, find the temperature for each of the following. For question A, if we start with a temperature of positive 18 degrees Celsius and it rises by 9 degrees Celsius, if you find it helps, you can use a number line, but I'm hoping that we don't need to. This is just going to be positive 18 and rising means going up, so plus 9. 18 plus 9, that's going to be 27. Positive 27 degrees Celsius, obviously. Next, we're starting with negative 7 degrees Celsius, and that temperature is falling by 2 degrees. Now, if a temperature falls, it's going down. And in this case, it's already negative. So if we subtract from a negative value, it's only going to get more negative. This is negative 7 minus 2. If you find these questions relatively easy, feel free to hit pause, copy the questions, and work them out for yourself. And I'm just going to keep going through. So negative 7 minus 2 is going to be more negative. That's negative 9 degrees Celsius. For question C, the temperature starts out at positive 23 degrees Celsius and it falls by 12 degrees Celsius. Remember, falling means decreasing, going down. So we're subtracting 12 from the 23. Positive 23 minus 12, that's going to make it less positive, but obviously not enough to make it go into the negatives because 23 is bigger than 12. 23 minus 12 is still positive 11 degrees Celsius. And finally, question D, if the temperature starts out at negative 3 degrees Celsius and it rises by 2 degrees Celsius, we're starting with a negative and we're adding to it. It's becoming less negative, but as 2 is less than 3, it's still going to be negative. Negative 3 up 1, 2, still keeps me in the negatives. That's still negative 1 degree Celsius. Let's try another integer problem. A submarine is at a depth of 120 meters below sea level. Find its depth after the following depth changes. So first, if it started at 120 meters below sea level and it rises 50 meters, keep in mind that 120 below sea level means negative 120 meters. Below sea level, we're going into the negative numbers. So that's negative 120 plus 50. This is a negative value and we're adding to it. So it's going to get less negative. You could mentally be thinking 120 minus 50, but you know it's going to stay in the negatives. That's going to be negative 70 meters. Now, if we then sink another 80 meters, so continuing on, this is the same submarine, so we're starting at negative 70, and we're sinking, we're going down another 80, so that's subtracting 80. This is now getting more negative. It's going further down below sea level. So that's going to go down to negative 150 meters. So now that the submarine is at negative 150 meters, or simply 150 meters below sea level, and it rises 140 meters, rising is going upwards, that's plussing. This is negative 150 plus 140. It's going to get less negative, but it's not quite going to go into the positives yet. That's going to take us up to negative 10 meters. That's 10 meters below sea level. Credit and debt questions are also a really good example of where we might use positive and negative numbers. When you're in debt, you owe money, so you could consider yourself as having a negative amount of money. When you have credit, you have money available that you could spend. So that's a positive value. So for example, suppose you start off with 30 euros in your bank account. Let's assume that this is positive 30 euros in the bank account, not 30 euros that you owe. So you're not yet in debt. Work out the balance of your bank account after these transactions. First, your salary of 840 euros is deposited into your account. Then your rent of 600 euros is debited from your account. Remember, debt means owing, so if it's debited, it's taken away. Then you go shopping and pay 70 euros with your bank card. You're paying for the things that you're buying, so this is money coming out of your bank. Then your credit card bill arrives and the bank takes an automatic payment of 280 euros. Next, you return an item that you bought for 45 euros. So this value is credited to your account. That is, it is added back into your account. Starting with part A now, if we started out with 30 euros in our account and our salary of 840 euros is deposited, let's add 30 plus 840, which is positive 870 euros. Then when we pay our rent of 600 euros, we'll do 870 minus the 600 that we're paying. That leaves us with 270 euros. Then we go shopping and we spend 70 euros. So this is 270 minus the 70, leaving us with positive 200 euros. But look what happens next. Our credit card bill arrives and the bank takes an automatic payment of 280 euros. So this is 200 euros minus 280. That's going to take us into the negatives. And this is possible. A lot of students are shocked and amazed that you could possibly have a negative amount of money. Unfortunately, it happens a lot more often than it should. You really need to be careful with your finances before you go spending money that you don't have. So now we're 80 euros in debt. So you decide to return one of the items you bought for 45 euros. So that means we're going to do negative 80 plus the 45, but we will still be 35 euros in debt. On that note, let's get on some practice. So for questions 1 to 10, these questions are fairly straightforward. They're just purely mathematical. Remember, we always start with the first value, so don't change the signs of any of those first values. But when you see a double sign like plus plus on question 1 or minus minus on question 2, remember whether that means to add or subtract. Then from question 11, this is a word problem. We're talking about a stone that falls from the top of a cliff, which reaches 11 meters above sea level. And the stone falls and sinks down to the bottom of the seabed directly below the cliff. How far does the stone fall if the seabed is at a depth of 56 meters below sea level? You may want to draw a diagram to help with that if you need to. Question 12, very similarly, is a plane which is flying at a height of 3,480 meters above a submarine. Now that submarine is below sea level. Find the height above sea level at which the plane is flying if the submarine is 1,200 meters below sea level. Once again, a diagram might help for that. Now go ahead and copy these questions out. Make sure you show you're working. Don't use a calculator, please. We need the practice. And once you've got your answers and you're ready to take them up, hit play so that we can do that. I hope you had a chance to hit pause, because here come your answers. For question 1, we're going to do 8 plus 3, which is 11. For question 2, negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. Number 3, negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8. Number 4, we're going to have to do this in 2 parts, but starting with negative 8 minus 4 minus 7. First, we'll do negative 8 minus 4, which is negative 12. So negative 12 minus 7, which is negative 19. We'll do the same thing for all of our other questions. So this is 3 minus 9 minus 4. 3 minus 9 is minus 6. So minus 6 minus 4 is minus 10. Question 6, 3 minus 5 plus 3. So negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Question 7, 6 minus 8 plus 2. That's negative 2 plus 2, which will be 0. Question 8, 3 plus 8 minus 7. That's 11 minus 7, which is 4. Number 9, 3 minus 6 plus 9 is negative 3 plus 9, which is 6. And question 10, negative 4 minus 2 plus 7. That's negative 6 plus 7, which is 1. Question 11, we're trying to find the difference between these heights. So starting from positive 11, the difference between two numbers is a subtraction of those two numbers, but that's positive 11 minus negative 56, because remember 56 is below sea level. That's the same thing as positive 11 plus 56, which is positive 67 meters. The difference between the top of the cliff and the seabed down below is 67 meters. Next, for question 12, we've got this diagram over here to help us. You can see that the airplane is above sea level. It's flying at 3,480 meters above the submarine, but the submarine is 1,200 meters below sea level. So to work out the height of the plane above sea level, consider the total distance being 3,480 meters minus the distance that the submarine is below sea level to work out the distance that's left for the plane above sea level. So we'll do 3,480 minus 1,200, which is simply 2,280 meters. That's our height of the plane above sea level. Now, how did you manage with that? Did you use diagrams to help you out? Did you need number lines for questions 1 to 10? It's perfectly fine if you did. What's not okay is if you needed to use a calculator. So please let me know if you had any problems with that. Otherwise, well done, keep practicing, and I'll see you soon.